Every time I see an adult on a bicycle, I no longer despair for the future of the human race. The only true measure of success is the ratio between what we might have done and what we might have been on the one hand, and the thing we have made, and the things we have made of ourselves, on the other. The New Deal is plainly an attempt to achieve a working socialism, and avert a social collapse in America. It is extraordinarily parallel to the successive policies and plans of the Russian experiment. Americans shirk the word socialism. But what else can one call it? Crime and bad lives are the measure of a state's failure. All crime in the end is the crime of the community. The doctrine of the kingdom of heaven, which was the main teaching of Jesus, is certainly one of the most revolutionary doctrines that ever stirred and changed human thought. Human history becomes more and more a race between education and catastrophe. The past is the beginning of the beginning, and all that is, and has been is, but the twilight of the dawn. Leaders should lead as far as they can, and then vanish. Their ashes should not choke the fire they have lit. There's nothing wrong in suffering, if you suffer for a purpose. Our revolution didn't abolish danger or death. It simply made danger and death worthwhile. I must confess that my imagination refuses to see any sort of submarine doing anything but suffocating its crew and floundering at sea. A time will come when a politician who has willfully made war and promoted international dissension will be as sure of the dock and much surer of the noose than a private homicide. It is not reasonable that those who gamble with men's lives should not stake their own. Affliction comes to us, not to make us sad, but sober, not to make us sorry, but wise. While there is a chance of the world getting through its troubles, I hold that a reasonable man has to behave as though he were sure of it. If at the end your cheerfulness is not justified, at any rate you will have been cheerful. There is nothing in machinery, there is nothing in embankments, and railways, and iron bridges, and engineering devices to oblige them to be ugly. Ugliness is the measure of imperfection. Once the command of the air is obtained by one of the contending armies, the war becomes a conflict between a seeing host and one that is blind. Man is the unnatural animal, the rebel child of nature, and more does he turn himself against the harsh and fitful hand that reared him. In England, we have come to rely upon a comfortable time lag of 50 years, or a century intervening between the perception that something ought to be done, and a serious attempt to do it. We are living in 1937, and our universities, I suggest, are not halfway out of the 15th century. We have made hardly any changes in our conception of university organization, education, graduation, for a century, for several centuries.